Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
Here's why the Nike Zoom Mercurial Superfly 9 Elite might be the best football boot of 2022. That you can get right now in several different colorways below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. With the first question you might be asking yourself being, why the Superfly and not the Vapor? Because since the two effectively became the same thing, one low and one mid, with the Superfly 6 and Vapor 12, there really hasn't been a great reason to spend the extra $25 on the Superfly, and I'll be honest in saying there still isn't. Objectively, the $250 Vapor 15 Elite is every bit as good as the Superfly, but for the extra $25, I just feel like the mid-cut collar, now that I've seen it in multiple different colorways, and maybe this hints at Nike kind of designing this as a Superfly first. This has nothing to do with performance, but I feel like the boot just looks so much better in this colorway and all the others. There's just something about the Superfly this time around that just works. Feel free to share your own opinions on that down in the comments. As far as overall performance is concerned, I truthfully don't believe that Nike have made any huge performance gains with the Superfly 9 over the Superfly 8 that it now replaces. However, what I do think that the Superfly 9 does better and does differently than any other football boot you can buy right now, other than the Vapor of course, is feel. There isn't a single football boot on the planet that will make you play better, but there also isn't a single football boot on the planet that feels quite like these. And that unique feel ultimately boils down to one thing and one thing only, and that is the incorporation of Air Zoom tech, which you can see very blatantly there on the side. It even says Air Zoom on the upper. This colorway in particular doesn't say Air in giant letters on either side, which I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate. But inside the football boot, remove the insole and you guys will get a look at the insole, which you can see has a cavity kind of outlining the Zoom unit itself, where inside of the football boots, basically directly underneath your feet, you can see there is a 3/4 length articulated Zoom unit with some strips of grippy material on top that effectively give you this bouncy response sensation underneath your foot, something that I can only compare to a nice pair of running shoes. It's a low profile cushion, but also something that doesn't feel mushy, and it gives the new Mercurial more of a smooth running shoe flow when running than any other football boot that I've ever tried. It's definitely one of those things that you have to try for yourself to truly understand, but I can't imagine that there are going to be very many people that try out this new Air Zoom tech and dislike it. The tech certainly doesn't offer the performance-enhancing responsiveness that Nike talks about in their marketing material, but what it does offer is a certain feel that is not only positive, but also extremely comfortable, and I think that impacting the feel with every single step is only a good thing. Another difference that definitely isn't as impactful but is still worth mentioning is the fact that they've incorporated this Air Zoom tech while also reducing the overall weight of the boots when compared to the outgoing Superfly 8, both in a size 9.5 US. You can see the Superfly 8 weighs in at 7.3 ounces, the equivalent of 206 grams. Change the scale back to ounces and throw on the Superfly 9, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.05 ounces, the equivalent of 200 grams. So only a 6-gram weight difference, which you're certainly not going to notice, but you will definitely feel that Air Zoom unit. And if anything, I actually think the new Superfly 9 feels a little bit more solid than the previous generation of Mercurial, which is impressive considering that it is technically lighter. From a touch perspective, the new Vapor Posit Plus upper really isn't a huge departure from what was introduced on the previous generation of Mercurials. It's still a textile-based synthetic material now with this chevron pattern to it, arguably something that looks even more simple. The big difference being the speed cage lining material no longer being reinforced by microfiber strips. It's now just this thin, almost polyurethane plastic type making the overall thickness of the upper that little bit thinner, but also remarkably pliable. I think this is a great middle ground between the Flyknit days of the Mercurial and the Tahitian synthetic days of the Mercurial, maybe trending more towards the synthetic days in terms of overall feel, but I would argue that it's not a gigantic difference from the previous generation, but certainly that slight improvement. That's paired up with Flyknit material across the top of the foot with a one-piece construction, and of course the mid-cut collar that you get on the Superfly 9 that a lot of people love to argue provides ankle support. If you want to believe that, be my guest. The reality is, however, it's material around your ankle that effectively does nothing. And of course, the boots also feature ACC technology, making them great in rainy conditions as well as for scuba diving. Another notable change would be the sole plate, which was designed mainly to house that Air Zoom technology on the underside, but you'll notice that it's gone away from a split sole construction, still maintaining its anatomic shape, which you'll definitely feel when you put the boots on, but instead it's a solid piece of plastic, which ultimately feels pretty similar in terms of overall flexibility. There's an argument to be made that this is a little bit more flexible than what we had before, but I don't think it's a gigantic difference. The stud pattern, however, specifically the FG variation, is where we're seeing the significant departure from what's been the last several generations of Mercurial, no longer featuring those chevron bladed studs. Instead, you have this tri-star design, which we've seen on some limited edition Nike boots over the last several years. The idea here providing more multi-directional aggressive traction rather than just traction when pushing off in a straight line. Is it a huge difference from a performance standpoint in terms of the bite you get when compared to the outgoing stud pattern? Not really. I would say it's just a little bit of a different feel, but ultimately performs to the same overall standard. Bladed studs in the heel, so that really doesn't feel any different. And again, if you're expecting that aggressive Mercurial traction, despite this being a different design, you're still getting that. On feet, the Superfly 9 feels like a pair of Mercurials. They have that tight wrap around your foot. The upper is thin, but also structured. There's an argument to be made that they've definitely made them a little bit wider and increased the volume when compared to the previous generation, but it still has that low profile feel that I think most people will be really happy with. They just increased the width ever so slightly to where I think they're gonna be a little bit more comfortable for somebody with a slightly wider foot, which is why I think these will fit most people as long as you like that tight fit. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing them in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to get a pair, I would definitely recommend going true to size. The Air Zoom unit underneath your foot, however, is really the reason why you buy this football boot. And I understand that Zoom is not a new technology from Nike. You probably have a pair of running shoes or trainers or basketball shoes or whatever it may be with an Air Zoom unit in it, and probably are saying to yourself, why do you need that in a pair of football boots? The ground is already providing some cushion, and that is absolutely true. You don't need Air Zoom in your boots, but once you feel it, I think you probably will. It's not quite the same argument, but it's kind of a similar idea in that technically you could also run without running shoes, but you definitely would feel more comfortable with a pair of running shoes underfoot. And I think what's interesting about this Air Zoom tech is it doesn't really feel like a pair of running shoes with the same technology, in that it's much more stable and it's a lot less significant in terms of its overall thickness. But I think most importantly, it's not on top of or contained within a piece of foam that's obviously going to compress with every step along with that Zoom unit. This is sitting directly on top of a hard plastic sole plate, so the compression and bounce back sensation that you get, I really feel is amplified when you compare that to every other football boot that is out there right now. There truly isn't anything else like it in terms of feel. Running in this football boot just feels smooth. There's no other way to describe it. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, once you get the chance to try it out, I can't imagine there's gonna be very many people that don't like the way that it feels. It's one of those things where if I had the option to have this same technology in any other pair of football boots, I definitely would opt to have it. I know myself, along with many other people, have complained to Nike for making the Superfly and the Vapor effectively the same thing. And I'm going to continue to make that complaint because I really do miss the days of the Vapor and Superfly offering two different Mercurial experiences. However, with this latest generation of Air Zoom Mercurial, if you will, I really feel like the Superfly is an actual Superfly in terms of introducing new and interesting tech that not only feels the part, but also performs the part. Not necessarily to the performance enhancing extent that Nike would lead you to believe, but from a feel perspective, I've never experienced running in a pair of football boots like I have in these. And again, the Vapor Superfly argument, it's a matter of personal preference at the end of the day, but for me, the Superfly 9 is the Mercurial to have and arguably the football boot to have in 2022.